Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining today's webinar, Orphan Accounts Privilege Abuse, Broken Workflows, how Pathlock's Agentic AI handles all three. Maybe a few words about myself. I'm Haviv Rosh, based in Israel, Pathlock CTO. Previously, was Chief Architect, Global Chief Architect at ServiceNow. Many years in the industry, started as a developer, architect, etc. Founder of 2 startups, and yeah, now I'm handling Pathlock engineering that includes roadmap, security development, and of course, the topic that we're going to talk today, agentic AIs. So let's start maybe with talking about what drives AI adoption in IGA. So the identity management space in the last few years, they've gone through massive transformation. So there is an explosion of application, like organization managing hundreds of different SaaS applications, and the fact that a few years ago, maybe 20 years ago, traditional enterprise application had maybe 4 or 5 different applications. Nowadays, with the SaaS application, you have hundreds of them, and each one of them has its own kind of user's role and identity kind of architecture behind the scene. There is also an explosion of identities and identity types. So no longer you have only human identity, you have non-human, you have bots, you have service accounts, and that actually increased the exposure of the entire thing. And of course, nowadays we're experiencing also AI threats. Every organization is trying to add AI agents and bots and playing with all sorts of AI-related stuff. So that actually exposes another layer of AI-related threats. But given all that, we all realize that identity security is in fact a data problem. So we must analyze, understand user behavior, access history, and risk in real time. All this massive amount of data that we're talking about, like coming from identities, coming from the different application, you need to actually gather all this data and bring it to a central place and have context. So the power of why, like understanding what it means, that's the key kind of ingredient to understand the risk that you have currently in your identity management space. Because if you think about it, identities actually are related to business. So if, for example, I have something that happened in my identity space, but it's not connected to an important business application, then the risk is like lower than something that is attached to my crown jewel kind of application. So context-aware identity security is a key here. So ability to correlate who, what, where, and when, and why for access is a must-have, right? So connecting all this data, pushing all the data from the different sources, connecting them and understanding the business impact or the business structure, and then provide the context. But there are typical limitations of AI in IGA nowadays. So we all understand to handle all this kind of data or the context that I was talking about, you need AI for that. Human cannot actually go through all this massive amount of information, and understand all that. You need AI to actually understand and come up with those kind of best practices of risk analysis. But AI currently in large organization, there are lots of limitations, right? So first, data privacy. Models are in the cloud, public models, sending data to the cloud is like very problematic. Data without the full context, as we just talked about, it's just noise. So if you don't understand the business context, it's just another kind of noise. And black box also, having those generic models without a very defined kind of purposely built kind of model for the identity management space. It just, it'll give you just generic kind of questions back or do the analysis in the wrong way. So we need something else. We all understand it's a data problem. We need AI, but traditional AI or just use AI as it is, it's just not enough. So we are thinking about it in a different way. And the way we're thinking about it is we call it AAA, automate, analyze, advise, and automate. That's the way we're actually thinking about how to use AI. And analyze is about scanning the data and understanding what are the insights or actionable insights that drive risk reduction. That's the most basic kind of layer that we're thinking about. Then advise, like suggest something. The AI can suggest next steps and be actually in the middle between two-person and advise. And the final thing is like automate. Take things that you're doing again and again and automate them end to end. And I'll, in a minute, drill down into each one of them. And I'll also show a quick demo per each so you can understand exactly what it means with more details. So this is actually, again, the three layers or the three pillars that we were talking about with few examples. So let's take analyze, for example. And again, it's a matter of chat with your data, ability to get all this identity information, data from all the different sources, put them in a kind of a data lake, and then surface all sorts of risk, ability to chat with your data, ask questions, and also provide you insights that a human being will it will be very hard for him to do without spanning, doing multiple queries, multiple reports, crossing them in the middle, et cetera, et cetera. And I'll show in a minute an example of that. Advise, for example, detecting unauthorized activity during privilege session. So imagine that you have an agent that sits in between privileges session reviews, and it actually goes and scans it and do the review, and then provide to the reviewer like analysis and score analysis and recommendation. So you actually put someone in the middle between the person and the reviewers. And automation is automate is actually taking those, again, things that you're doing on a daily basis or things that you're even doing with AI and try to automate it based on our workflow engine. So let's maybe take an example, a concrete example, and I'll show a demo of it so it will be clear. One example is identifying orphan accounts. To do that, it's actually very complex because you need to span or cross-check a lot of different sources. So orphaned accounts are actually accounts that are not connected to any identities. So someone, let's say, created a service account or an account and then left the organization. But this account is still active. That's why it's, it's orphaned because it doesn't have any ownership. And the worst thing is like, is it actually active? Anyone actually is using this account constantly to access some risky or some critical system that they have? This is like a very important problem to identify. And to do that today, you need to cross-check a lot of different sources, et cetera, et cetera. So maybe I'll demonstrate that. So what you see here is Pathlock IQ. This is an interface we developed that sits on top of all the data lake data that we collect, users, identities, accounts, usage logs, et cetera, all in one place. And I can simply ask questions in plain English. And behind the scene, it's working with MCP that is connected to other sources. And it will do multiple kind of queries until it finds what it needs. So let's see how it happens. You see here, it comes with predefined kind of question. Of course, I can add my question. So which orphan accounts have been active within the last 120 days and pose a risk to my critical financial system? So let it run. So I click it. And then you see that it gave me immediately a list of all the accounts, like it found 4 orphaned accounts, show recent activity, and have SOD violation in SAP ERP. So it not just found them, but also it found out that they have recent activity and they have SOD violation. So that's actually poses some risks. And it also provides me the business impact, right? And even more insight that you may want to explore, like which specific SOD rules are violated, et cetera, and I can actually also automate that. Let's say I want to route those 4 high-risk orphan accounts for urgent reviews by the finance owner. Let's continue. And I can ask, more questions. Who is the accountable business owner? And it gives me the business owner in this case. And in this case, all 4 accounts actually lack an assigned business owner. So that's even worse. So it means that I need to, like, super urgent to do something about them right now. And of course, it provides me more insights and more automation that I can do. So what you've seen here is the analyze use case, all the data fetched from a central place, massive amount of data correlated together, and we expose a plain English kind of chat with your data to analyze and get some insights. Recommendation are actually being suggested, and more insights that you can actually go and fetch. So let's maybe switch to the next use case. So the next use case is privileged session governance advise. So as I said, the whole idea is to put an agent between in processes that has back and forth between different between approval and requester, to have someone in between that actually do this kind of manual work and provides more context. So the problem now today with this approach is that it's reactive and manual. So you need to submit something and then the approver lacks the context and needs to go back and forth between the approval and the requester, ask questions. And it's a resource intensive kind of reviews, and the result is like delayed risk detection. So what if we can put an agent between that, and I'm as a requester or submitter, I submit it to the agent takes that, review it, ask me questions. Why did you do that? Why did you need this and this and that? Instead of the reviewer, or before the reviewer does that, and then provides all this information. When the reviewer reviews that, goes and provides all this information with all the context. So that will reduce dramatically the risk and also improve the end-to-end kind of time. So let's maybe see that in action. And so let's say I have a privileged session review. I submit here a session review. So this is my request. I need to unlock user due to login issue reported in tickets. So let me submit that. And behind the scene, the AI is actually starting analysis. And it asks me a question immediately. So please explain why you assigned role Z admin. And I'm actually in reply, I'm saying I was validating a business partner record, confirm the correct customer was linked before releasing the payment. So the agent actually asked me a question. I'm replying back. Let's see what happens next. Okay, so it gives me another question. What was the purpose of it? And I just said, I just need a temp access for this table to perform my work. Of course, this is like a bad answer on purpose, but let's see what happens. So as you see, it asked me a question based on the context of what I did. And now I need to submit the response. And when I submit the response, is actually, this is what the reviewer actually is saying. So there is a detailed finding, justification and not, but this one, for example, the answer that I gave is unexpected. So you see here, the AI agent recommendation was unacceptable. Assigning the Z admin was not mentioned in the original request and does not align with the intent. More than that, the second question I gave is like weak. The explanation provided is vague. It does not clearly justify how the table is actually necessary. So the recommendation is to not approve this kind of request. So what you're seeing here, again, it's putting an AI agent in advise mode between two different people. It can ask the questions and provide the summary to the reviewer, making the process more secure and faster. Switching to the last use case, which is automate. So this is actually the crown jewel of, trying to automate as much as possible instead of just making things, trying to make things actionable. And we all know low code, no code kind of solutions are there. So they come with a lot of promise, but the problem is that it's hard to create them, hard to maintain them. Whenever something changes, it's hard. And you also need to think about them like a developer when you create it. So eventually they're very hard. Not a lot of organizations actually are creating them. We're creating few. And they lack the context. So what if we can also use AI there as well to develop those kind of workflows? Because on the other hand, you do need those workflows to be consistent and working in the same way again and again, and not just hallucinate. So luckily, we have an AI agent as well that helps you build workflows and automate. By again chatting with you and asking you questions. So the idea here is that you provide an intent and the AI agent asks you questions and help you automate the workflow. So let's see that in action. So I start building and I want to create a user onboarding. So the AI agent says, okay, I'll help you create the user onboarding. Then it starts asking me questions. What's the trigger? I say, I reply back. Who should approve? I say the manager. Which system the user get access to? Active Directory. What role? So it asks me basically question based on the type of automation that I created. And once I reply with all the information, it creates the workflow as you see, with all the different steps and all that you can understand visually. And to do that manually, or even with a drag and drop kind of interface, is like very, very cumbersome. You need to handle inputs. You need to know what's the trigger type, how to pass parameters between the different steps, etc., etc. Now, what about editing the workflow? Because it's nice, you create it once, but then you need to maintain it and automate it. And typically workflows expose this kind of interface on the right or left side with all the different parameters per action, but they are like hard to enter, right? You see here all the different attributes type. So again, the use of AI come to help here is again. So I can actually start chatting with the data about the specific step. And again, the AI actually asks me questions. How many days do you need? Who should escalate it to? Should certain requests be auto-approved based on criteria? Once I give all the information, the AI actually updates the steps and it's ready to use. So this is actually a big thing, because if we can automate the creation of workflows in an easy way, that's actually a big win. And remember the first use case with, the analyze or chat with your data. That's also based on the information that or the responses that the AI agent gave. It also suggested me to automate that. And to automate that, it will open this workflow with already the intent, and the workflow will be generated. So to summarize, just to remind everyone, we're talking about the AAA analyze. So it's AI that unveil hidden insights, advise, AI that suggests an action plan, and automate, AI that automates manual processes. It's a real agentic AI behind the scene, uses MCP, enable the agents that solve problems and answer why, not just what, across massive amount of data. And of course, we don't need to forget about compliance. It's compliant conscious. So we're using local LLMs, not sending the data or private data to the cloud. Everything is like embedded and running locally to keep the data always in control. So this is just a summary slide. So AI-powered intelligence is the bridge between static compliance and continuous assured compliance. And I'll pause here and take maybe some questions.
Thank you so much for such an insightful and forward-looking presentation. It's really exciting to see how AI, especially agentic AI, is moving from theory into real practical use cases in IGA. There's clearly a lot of innovation happening in the space. And now let's move on to the Q&A portion of the session. I see we already have some great questions coming in, so thank you for that. And let's start with the first one. How are agentic AI or AI agents different from AI in general?
Yeah, it's a good question. So AI agents can actually do multiple kind of, you basically give them a task and some tools, and behind the scene, they iterate and reason until they solve this kind of task. Normal AI, it's about, machine learning and one-shot kind of try. An AI agent can actually fulfill a task. You give it a goal, you give it some tools, you give it some context, and then behind the scene, the AI agent will iterate until it reaches its goal and solve actually concrete problem. So that's the main kind of reason. There is also a lot of risk with that, because now the AI agents are like autonomous, creatures that can actually reason and iterate on top of your tools. So that's also possess a lot of risk. So you need to, know what you're doing.
All right, great. There is another question. How does this work in regulated environments where organizations do not want to send data to public AI models?
Yeah, it's actually a very good question. I think I touched best about it in the presentation. So we realize because we're working with a lot of regulated companies and pharma, etc., and it's a big no-no to actually send data to LLM, specifically public LLMs. And specifically, we're talking about here about identity-related data, which is like even more kind of sensitive. So I think it depends on the use case, but for our use case, which is enterprise handling regulator environment, sensitive data, the must-have for us is running it on a local LLM that we host, and it's in our data center. It never leaves. The data never leaves our region, and we have full control about the model and what gets in, what gets out. So it's just like another database that we host and chat with. So that's actually very important to figure out, because those kind of use cases, you don't want to send the data to the cloud.
All right, here's another one. Automation and identity governance can feel risky. How do you introduce automation while still maintaining strong governance guardrails? Excellent point.
Yeah, yeah. It's a fair point. So I think at least the approach we took is to put a human in the loop, the way we call it. So if you see in the demo, we are generating the workflows. The AI generates the workflows, but the human needs to approve them. So there's always, before doing an action, there's always a human that will actually approve it. Same goes with the advise. The AI agent can actually analyze and give you suggestion and all that, but the approver of the session or the approval of the request is always the human. And because we realize there are like certain certain things that we don't want to fully automate without a human in the loop.
Mm-hmm. One more question to the discussion. How are organizations managing non-human identities today?
Yeah, so we see that we're starting seeing that a lot. So there are lots of non-human identities like service accounts, AI agent, bots, etc. Typically, they are created at one point in time, and then they are left there because they don't have necessarily a human that is managing them. So I think the entire industry need to figure out the way to bring unmanaged identities or non-human identities to manage. And that means ability to discover all those non-human identities, tag them, and understand who is the owner. And if there aren't any owners, have the workflows to assign them a human owner. And then also update system of records like ServiceNow, CMDB, and others about those identity, who are the owner, when actually it's expired. Also think about when someone leaves their organization and he's like the owner of a non-human identity, then what happens to the non-human identity? You need to alert on that, and again, bring that into managed, because those identities are typically powerful identities. They can do a lot of stuff, and if you don't have the right checks and balances, that can be very, very risky.
Okay, I feel like we'll pause here for now. I can see there's still a few questions in the Q&A, and we will make sure to follow up with you after the webinar. Thanks everybody for joining us today, and we really appreciate your time and participation. A recording of this webinar will be available within the next few hours using the same link you used to join today's session. Thanks again and have a great day.